Hey, it's Soul, and welcome back to my world of design fanfiction, aka a video resume for a job at Blizzard. And today, the teasing is over. It is time to reveal my updated vision of creating your own housing, or guild hall, or community hall in the world of Warcraft. This video is obviously a doozy if you saw the runtime on this, and it's with your support that I can keep making fun videos to support the World of Warcraft, so don't forget to subscribe and consider becoming a patron. So the last time I seriously talked about this stuff, aka player housing, wasn't the other week, but it was way back in September of 2018. Many moons have passed though, and today, as we approach a new era of the World of Warcraft, one that is divided between what you quickly blow past and what is current, I will present to you my updated vision of how customizing your own personal dwelling in the World of Warcraft is going to work. But first, why housing? We've been there, done that, haven't we? Yes, inevitable commenter, we have. But the grumbling for a system that's one part collection and one part individual expression has not let up. But let's get to the real rhetoric. What have the typical objections been against traditional player housing? Blizzard themselves have said that they don't want player housing to turn the outdoor world into a ghost town, where players would be too busy tinkering away at their homes and not out and about adventuring. Also, critics have said that it's too much work for a system that arguably may not be successful. They would say something like, instead of making us play Dollhouse, they should introduce new, innovative gameplay, new battlegrounds, or things that just work. And critics have said that housing adds literally nothing to the World of Warcraft. Real RPGs, they would say, are about numbers and best in slot and top in meters, not immersing yourself into some microcosm of your own design, right? If the critics are right, a true champion of Azeroth is homeless. World of Warcraft is a game to beat, not a world to immerse yourself into. So to respond, let's talk about what the design philosophy will be regarding player housing in WoW. I said this phrase just earlier, that housing is one part collection and one part expression of your individuality. Today, we look at our ever-expanding collections of stuff that sit in a UI collecting virtual dust, at least until the opportunity comes to flex. Girl, don't you know who I am? I'm Soul. Check out my flail, it's so long it clips through the ground. Our collections need purpose beyond just the UI. Let's do something with all this stuff that we've amassed over the years. WoW needs a better place to display our collections as well as our achievements, our accomplishments, in a fun, fulfilling, and permanent way. What you create doesn't even have to be a house. It could be a museum, dedicated to your history as a character and as a player. Imagine racks of memorable weapons, each with their own story to tell, or that tier 3 set that you somehow completed, or rare pets and mounts on display worth millions of gold. Yes, housing is going to be a collection system that's no different from how we treat transmog, or achievements, or toys, or pets, or mounts. But housing is what these systems have been building up to. Housing will tie it all together. The critics are right, in that interested players will be at their home, setting it up the way that they like it, but that's only part of the story. A good implementation of housing won't just encourage players to travel around the world to farm and collect items, but to initiate commerce between players through crafting and trading, all for the sake of making a dope-ass place to show off your ill-gotten gains. This philosophy is the total opposite of the Garrison, which did in fact go live, and it was designed to be a more efficient source of progression than the entire outdoor world, which was exactly what Blizzard was critiquing in some self-fulfilling prophecy. In this absurdly long presentation, I'm going for something different. Housing is not an expansion feature like the Warlords of Draenor Garrison, which was tied intrinsically to progression and then tossed aside in the next expansion. Housing is an evergreen system that is ever-present, independent from progression. If you subscribe to only WoW Classic, well, you could still dabble in this player housing thing. It's simply there. We can binge work on it for weeks or months and then be done because, we hit that sweet spot, we've peaked, we're done. Or we can largely ignore it at the start until we discover, oh my god, I can make a demon-themed bar and brothel on a floating rock in the middle of the twisting nether, and all of a sudden, it becomes an obsession. As a feature, housing will have humble beginnings in its initial launch, and then grow incrementally with every patch, just like how, new pets and mounts come in a patch, and new transmog options that are naturally added with new armor and weapons. With housing, new doodads and assets can be added with an expansion, a major, or a minor patch. These aren't necessarily unique assets either, they can be what we've been seeing for years, just finally converted into something for display in this new system. Housing is an expression of everything that you've collected and achieved in WoW, so naturally it's account-wide. What you unlock on one character is available for all valid characters with no additional efforts needed. Guild halls are kind of the opposite. Developing a guild hall brings us back to the days of guildmates working together towards common goals like legendary crafting. Only this time, what the guild makes persists as long as the guild does, but we'll get more into that later. Because first, we have to look at how this game-changing feature will affect everyone, whether they want to make a place for themselves or not. At the center of the housing economy will be the existing player professions, who will make a sizable majority of all the materials that will go into the system. Every profession will bring something to the table. Blacksmiths will make things like rods, frames, and casts. Engineers will make gears and moving parts. Scribes will make things like paper and create dyes, while enchanters will make power sources and lenses. Gatherers will find additional materials on top of the usual herbs, ore, or skins that will be used for building. Archaeologists too can discover rare finds and materials that otherwise would normally drop from dungeons. Even cooking will have its place because, how are you going to stock that fridge or liquor cabinet, right? And you can't have a dinner table without dinner. But let's dive deeper into professions now. Right now, professions are divided into WoW's numerous expansions. Within each section, many new recipes are going to be added, but don't get too wowed, okay? Many recipes will be different versions of another, like, there's going to be a mithril bolt, a true iron bolt, and an osmanite bolt. Ooh, crazy, right? All of these recipes are accessible from a trainer, and only need a profession level requirement. That's it, so it's great for leveling too. Housing items will be specific to their origins as well. Wrath or the Lich King era placements will use Wrath of the Lich King materials, Legion to Legion, and so on and so forth. And everything, from the materials to the created items, can be traded. Nothing is soulbound. The small catch is that professions won't be the endpoint to build that fancy fireplace made out of Ragnaros' head, for example. Professions will play a massive part with creating the components. Blacksmiths, for example, will need lava cores and elementium ore to build the frame for this so-called fireplace. Jewel crafters, engineers, and herbalists will also pitch in. They'll show you how to get the rest of the materials to make that fireplace glow red, green, or purple. But it's going to be your character who is the endpoint that takes all of these pieces and finally puts it all together. The reason we're taking this approach is because of accessibility and, to a certain degree, roleplay. Now, we could go with the following approach, where a certain blacksmith can craft this fireplace of Ragnaros because he or she beat his ass and learned a recipe. That's a perfectly workable system that celebrates the prowess and dedication of that crafter, but I have a different plan in mind, where the knowledge of how to build this fireplace or any housing item lies with the player who is building it in the first place. You, champion person, you're the one who beat Ragnaros. You're the one who was inspired by his awesomeness to create this really cool thing. And the same thought process will apply to guild halls. Did some random blacksmith get the idea to mount Onyxia's head on a flaming elementium spike? No, because he wasn't there. You and your guild, though, you guys were. So this suggests two things. One is that what you create is thanks to your accomplishments and not simply your ability to make a lot of gold and then buy all this stuff from the auction house. Second, it enables players with professions to have quick accessibility to make profitable items without having to take their crafting characters out to farm materials for recipes. Everyone can easily participate. Of course, we know that everyone probably won't. So to sum up this part, professions will drive the housing economy. All crafting professions will get new recipes and things to find and build housing components that are easy to access. Gatherers will find more materials from nodes. Nothing is being taken away, you're just getting more stuff whenever you pick things. And across the board, reagents of every rarity will be added to the loot tables for notable mobs from dungeons, raids, and like rares and outdoor content, because farming is a hidden profession unto itself. To wrap it all together, everything in the housing system is tradable. So even if you don't lift a finger towards building anything on your own, if nothing else, you'll have more stuff to sell in the auction house or a vendor if you really don't like money. As a feature, housing will more than likely be presented alongside an expansion announcement or a major patch, not because it's going to be the big feature, but because of the scale that it's going to affect world content and professions, as I had mentioned. No matter how I try to spin it though, the initial launch will need to make a really big splash, and it will be extremely resource intensive, from the art to the engineering. Over time, we hope to see tons of variants, but to break it down, 3 kinds of buildings will come with this feature. There's a personal home, or a building that's for you. There are guild halls that depend on the hard work of you and your guildmates, and finally community halls, which won't have the more robust options that housing and guild halls will have, but communities too should have their own place to gather. There are a few different engines that could be developed to unleash the creativity in players, and this is what I settled on. WoW housing will use pre-built houses, similar to the likes of Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy XIV, and not buildings that you can make totally from scratch like the now defunct MMO WildStar. So housing and halls will consist of what's basically pre-built structures and an outdoor area. For the sake of consistency, WoW isn't going to use a neighborhood system like Final Fantasy XIV. This way, the interior and exterior of your dwelling is a single instance with no additional load times. Personally, I think it would be prudent to launch housing sooner than later, as a feature, so I wouldn't mind having fewer building options at the start as long as more are being developed between patches. Eventually, I envision the home architecture will support all races, with only very few exceptions like the Vulpera, who typically don't have dwellings, as well as some allied races who use similar buildings as others. And maybe larger, more elaborate prefabrications for housing and halls can be made with a gold cost, if we're to use gold as an example. While on the subject of races, maybe some races can get access to race-specific decorations to celebrate their heritage, if that seems like a popular idea. Either at launch or further down the line, the home can be located elsewhere too. Different zone biomes like Elwyn Forest, Nagrand, or the Plaguelands, sure. And you'll have tons of options across multiple expansions. So imagine this. It's your first login for the day. You're at home and you greet some of your favorite pets. You walk over to the fridge that you built and select your favorite feast. On your table, a clickable feast appears that gives you a buff that increases your life regeneration and run speed when you're doing outdoor content. Sweet. Then you run over to your room real quick and click on your closet to change your transmog into something more suitable. You drop by your special mission board and send off your guys and gals from the Broken Isles and Argus and either Kultiras or Zandalar, and then walk through a portal to your faction's portal room, and you finally begin your day. Your objective is to finally unlock the Thunder Forge for your blacksmithing ults. So let's talk about how we got here. Using the upcoming Shadowlands level structure, you can start building your dwelling, your guild, or your community hall as early as level 10, right after completing Exile's Reach, with no other restrictions. There's basically going to be a quest available that's not a prerequisite to anything else, so you can skip out on housing right from the get-go if you want to, but let's say you pick it up. Your very first building will be in your capital city. You'll be led to a new residential district zone kind of place where all players can get to their buildings. It's more or less gifted to you, so just take what you're given and be grateful, okay? Alliance will get a building of like this hybrid Stormwind and Kultiran architecture, something, snazzy and up to date, while the Horde will get a building of Orc and Goblin architecture. Remember, your first buildings are going to be in the capitals, so they're going to have that kind of theme attached to it. Your first dwelling is a basic 2-room home. You can also think of the home as having 3 main sections. There's the living area, there's the bedroom, And then there's the surrounding outside area. Guilds and community halls will have a pretty similar layout. At the very beginning, a few placements are unlocked and are immediately available, like a bed, a place to sit, and some basic doodads that you can play around with. If you're not new to the game though, and you've already completed hundreds of achievements and done all sorts of crazy things, you're going to retroactively open a bunch of what are called inspirations you can start working towards, and we'll have more on that soon. I should also add that on your max level characters, you can immediately just go down to that place in the capital, pick up the quest, and then get your home. Anyway, back to the introduction. You'll also meet your contractor, a master builder who, out of the goodness of his or her heart, will build and place whatever it is that you need at your new place. No charge. Of course, later on, if you want to upgrade to a different or a bigger building, you can do so for a nominal fee, and that will permanently unlock across your account. But if you're the type who wants to regularly switch between one building and another, or you want to relocate elsewhere, well, that's going to take some heavy lifting, and that never happens without gold. So how do you go about unlocking things to build and place, right? It starts off with you, adventurer, /champion, /commander, /order hall leader, /speaker of the something or other. You've seen and done things that no normal person on Azeroth is ever going to know of. So you have something unique. You have inspirations. Oh, okay, so what are inspirations? Inspirations are the blueprints in your noggin that will make your building or hall whatever you want it to be. Inspirations are linked directly to a familiar system, achievements. By completing achievements on your account, you open up these inspirations, aka building ideas. Killing Ragnaros in Molten Core will give you an idea to make that cool fireplace. Killing him in the Firelands will give you an idea to make a better one. So with housing, many more achievements will be added that will unlock more of these inspirations, or these recipes, or whatever stuff to make. Inspirations will have a UI that's visually similar to transmogrification with additional functionality. You can sort from type, like wall to floor placements, lights, furniture, doodads, crazy gadgets, and more. You can look at what you've unlocked, and more importantly, what you haven't, as well as how to obtain that inspiration. Inspirations are, of course, account-wide, and for those of us with veteran accounts, retroactive. So many players will have a lot of inspirations light up at the very launch of housing. But inspirations are just one part of creating items for your dwellings. You have the idea, cool, but now you need to turn it into something tangible that your contractor person can mass produce and then place. By clicking on an inspiration, you'll see a list of all the items that you need to build a prototype, which is just another way of saying that you'll fully unlock it for use in your house. So let's say you want to make a pile of boxes that's infected by the good old Lich King plague, flies, green stuff oozing out, and all. You got that inspiration because you completed the Calling of Stratholme. Congratulations. To make this prototype, you need some gently plagued scraps of wood, which is obtained randomly while picking herbs in Northrend. And you also need some time-displaced plague, obtained by defeating Mal'Ganis from, guess where? Calling of Stratholme. So you do a few runs of Stratholme and you get some of that plague, and then you get lazy and you just buy the rest of the stuff from the auction house. No big deal. So with those items on hand, you go into your UI, and now you can make your prototype with the click of a button. Once it's made, the items are consumed, and now these plague boxes can be placed in or around your building, any number of times on any character in your account. Here are some other examples. Maybe completing Lore Master achievements will give you the idea to print variations of the world maps as wallpaper. Completing your very first armor set will give you an idea to make armor dolls that you can apply your favorite sets or armor sets to. Completing 10 of them will unlock a cooler armor doll that this time you can pose it. And completing 50 of them will get you a doll that you can apply an animation to, like make them dance all the time. Completing the Insane achievement can give you the bright idea to make padded walls, because, sure, yeah, that makes sense. Other achievements can unlock a suite of smaller but still cool ideas. Lore Master of Cataclysm could unlock a bunch of themed inspirations like rugs, window trimmings, the welcome mat in front of your house, and more. So quick summary, you have a new inspiration UI, complete achievements to open up inspirations, gather materials and items to turn those inspirations into actual things that you can place. All the unlocks are account-wide. Ta-da! So now let's get to the actual building and placing of stuff. Customizing is accessible through a clickable console somewhere inside your building. When you click it, you get in touch with your contractor and activate this build mode. Now, for an easy visualization, this next section will show you footage from Monster Hunter World. It's a pretty good approximate of what I envision for WoW's housing engine. In build mode, you control the placement of what goes where in your house, but instead of freely placing items and needing pixel-perfect accuracy, you choose by section, and then subsection, and then sub-subsection if you need to. In other words, placements are anchored in predetermined slots. For example, you can select the living area of your house, followed by this wall section, and then decide what goes where. It can be a fireplace, it could be a statue of your greatness, an altar to your favorite blood god, or a shelf of random stuff. For certain selections like the shelf, you can then choose what goes onto that shelf, like the minifigures from Mechagon, a few select toys, or a ham sandwich. The same philosophy applies all over the place. You just select the room, then select the wall or a floor section of said room, and then select from whatever is available. Some of your creations may take up more than one space, so if you want to have that sweet stage over at the Seat of Knowledge, sure, go for it. Many basic placements will have unlimited uses like rugs, crates, and shelves. Other items, like an oversized Pepe, might have a build limit of 1. You can also apply overarching themes to your buildings too. You want it on fire? Sure, this is fine. Or apply holiday themes like the Winter's Veil or Love is in the Air. Outdoors, you have different sorts of options. Maybe you have a fireplace on the outside, but you probably want to make an area for a blacksmith anvil and forge, but that probably takes up a lot of space. You can line the outside of your home with a garden, or replace it with a target dummy. There are a lot of variations of those. Or a stable for a few of your favorite mounts. Or you can have nothing but target dummies, or nothing but stables. Are you a Zandalari troll? Cool. Maybe you can place a Loa altar so you can conveniently switch to a different Loa of worship. And who says that you're building a place to live? Maybe the interior is a bar that seats only one. Maybe you're building a dojo with dancing panda statues, or you can leave the house empty and sleep outside with a big old bust of your favorite war chief staring right back at you. Weirdo. But that's possible. I find this method to be the best balance of customization without having to go too far with creating this massive house building engine, as seen in other games like Elder Scrolls Online. This is more of a technical opinion, but this approach is more stable. It's friendly on memory for both the server and the client because there are clear guidelines and limitations on how much of what can be placed. It's also a reason why there might be a limited selection of buildings at launch. Because a home isn't just a blank slate, it's not unlike making a character model. They're going to come in different shapes and sizes, configurations, and on the technical side, a memory budget that only allows for so many placements. The size of a wall fixture, like a fireplace, will sit differently between a home built for humans, or Nightborn, or Pandaren. But there's still a lot of potential customization available, including ambient lighting, indoors, outdoors, or you can assign a few favorite pets to wander freely around your building. There's so much more that's possible that I could go on and just dream up stuff for hours. But let's pause for a moment and turn back to some objections, because I'm sure that throughout this whole presentation so far, you're full of them. One of the more contentious bullet points about this sort of customization is that it's going to take players out of cities and stuck in their own little worlds. Never mind the fact that that's exactly what Garrisons did, but there's a valuable lesson to be learned from that. This sort of system ought to be designed to get players out into the world and not stuck in said system. The utility of garrisons in Warlords was intrinsically tied to progression. The utility of player and guild housing will be intrinsically linked to collection, at least that's the intent. That automatically means that housing won't be a feature that you need to participate in order to be a top raider or a high performing player in WoW. It's not going to raise your item level, it's not going to trivialize gathering, it's not going to generate gold, but it will have utility. Earlier I talked about the Thunderforge. If you don't remember, the Thunderforge is, well, yeah, it definitely is kind of a big thing for crafting special items during the Mist of Pandaria expansion. It's needed to create these Thunderforged weapons, which are still a pretty hot commodity in some transmog circles. So how about an achievement? Let's say you crafted 10 of these Thunderforged weapons. What if that inspires you to create a replica of the Thunderforge at your home? Not only is that a quality of life change that lets your blacksmith alt not have to travel all the way to Thunder Isle, it's a visually impressive way to just show off how badass of a blacksmith you've become. So what else could we unlock for quality of life purposes? The Obliterum Forge? The Scrapper? Maybe mission tables? How about that refrigerator idea that I talked about? You can spawn your own minor food buff for free and invite your friends over to share in said buff. We don't want to grind to build things that end up not being worth the effort. What we have to be is very careful about towing the line between your buildings being a quality of life improvement versus a required thing to have. It'd be great to not have to jump from mission table to mission table if I still like doing that, and it would be nice to have my own personal target dummy that isn't outdated like the one at our garrisons. But we'd be pushing it if I were to buy seeds from a vendor and plant my own personal herb garden. I also wouldn't agree on an achievement for housing that unlocked unique pets or mounts. And it would be going too far if making an awesome house made my characters better or stronger in some way. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about guild as well as community halls. First, community halls are going to probably be the most limited out of all the kinds of buildings that you can make. And that's because anyone can make a community. There's no barrier to entry, and currently community achievements aren't a thing. So I can see some customization between the kind of building that you can have along with the location, but unlocking those is on the burden of the community leader. In this case, what Blizzard said will be true. All the fun in community housing customization will be on its leader. What you can build in community halls will be made up of what the owner unlocked off of his or her account. Changing the building and location, like I said, is also entirely on the owner. Now let's dive into guild halls, the arguably funner part. The system will be easy to understand because it's going to work the same way as individual player housing, except this time, the guild and its achievements are what unlocks exclusive guild inspirations to work on. Now if you jump straight to this section without seeing the rest, you may want to jump back into the section on inspirations, but anyway, the way I see it, guild housing will take a much greater effort to develop, due in part that a guild is not an account-wide thing that lasts forever. Players can leave and the guild can be disbanded. So if you happen to join a guild and witness this dazzling display of victory banners, severed heads, and other helpful utilities, you know that you're part of a team that has invested tons of effort, resource, and gold into its halls, and we want the game to make that apparent. Otherwise, the process should feel familiar. Guild achievements unlock inspirations, and with the guild's help, reagents and other resources go into turning those inspirations into something that you can place. The bigger the achievement, the more resources needed, and the more elaborate the decoration. That means the guild achievement system is going to require a lot of expanding too. For example, completing a raid as a guild is one thing, but what if ahead of the curve wasn't just an individual achievement, but a guild achievement? How about cutting edge? Guild achievements could also do with profession-related achievements. For example, reagent selling NPCs can be unlocked and upgraded to save having to run around to obtain profession materials from all over the place. It makes being part of a guild very convenient without making it necessarily better or more powerful. Here's a more specific example. Clearing any raid for the very first time as a guild on any difficulty inspires an idea for a portal machine kind of thing. The guild then pools resources together between blacksmithing, engineering, jewel crafting, and archaeology to build this machine. And then going forward, for every guild-run raid achievement, they can then work together to upgrade the machine so that it can take them to said raid. Is it needed to succeed? No, of course not. But does it make the efforts of the guild pay off in a cool way? Yeah, it's not bad. How about more fun stuff, like a display case to show off some of the legendaries that we made as a team, or a complete bar with a bartender NPC, or portraits of the guild leadership on display? How about a arena where you fight with foam swords? I mean, sure, why not? Under the restrictions and guidelines that we've gone over, guildmasters and authorized ranks in the guild, officers, will be allowed to customize the guild hall, and they can place items and doodads that anyone in the guild has unlocked from their personal housing. Pretty cool. So if only one person in your guild unlocked those plagued crates, for example, an officer can place it, but if that person happens to leave the guild, that doodad will be replaced by some equivalent, or it'll just disappear. Blizzard has often pushed back at the thought of guild halls because, in their words, only the guildmaster would have fun with the customization. So instead of giving up, let's, overcome that. The power isn't entirely with the few, or at least it doesn't have to be. The guild hall by default is more than what personal housing offers, with it's going to have like a larger outdoor area and larger living spaces, but there's also going to be a dormitory hall. Easy. It's a phased area for individual guild members that's kind of like a big bedroom. In this space, the player has full control to design the room as they like, with whatever unlocks that they have unlocked personally from their inspiration tab. So if your room is actually not even really a room, it's like a mini tavern, or a completely empty room except for padded walls, sure, so be it. And you ought to be able to check out the dorm room of any of your guildmates. A feature like this is nothing new. So we're finally starting to wrap things up, but before that, there's some other random musings that I want to share that didn't quite fit in the earlier presentation. It would be a bit overambitious, but really cool if your default homes in Orgrimmar and Stormwind, if you're over there, you can see like a whole neighborhood of a dozen or so different homes. But this is probably too much of a technical hurdle without a lot of payoff, because it's likely you'd see abandoned homes, or there would be weird phasing where you would only see active players' homes, and that would be odd. And I wouldn't want a system like Final Fantasy XIV where land for housing is finite, which would solve the problem because people are more invested into the system, but in Final Fantasy the interior for their housing is instanced, and that's pretty much it's pretty much WoW's mandate to avoid instancing wherever possible. On the other hand, it would be neat if you can see all of your alt homes if they happen to plant their roots all in the capitals, or if other characters on your account visited your home. That'd be kind of neat. And it would be damn sweet if you can pull a player up on the armory, and the API could pull your housing configuration and then show it on the armory page. And then people can click and do a virtual tour of your building, and the same could go for guild halls. I think in the capital city portal room, there should be a person you can talk to who can take you to anyone's house or guild hall, anywhere in the region, just by typing in the name and the server, and you can visit as long as the owner allows visitors to come in. But of course, you need to be partied with the owner or someone from that guild if you want to use any of the utilities inside, like the cheap food. I have a feeling that there'd be a memory problem if there were picture frames that you could craft, and said pictures were in-game screenshots. It would still be a cool thing to have, like, boss kills or just fun selfies hanging on your wall. And to be honest, I have really mixed feelings about this menu-based system of construction and placing objects, because I know that being able to shape your placements is super important to fans of player and guild housing. I think the reason I settled on this method goes back to accessibility. Some of us are more than willing to spend hours upon hours arranging and rearranging furniture to pixel-perfect accuracy. This is more feeling than fact, but I think that more WoW players would feel overwhelmed at the considerably slower process of building tile by tile and arranging doodads just the way that they want to. There are two extremes where a feature is either far too simple or too involved that would turn a player off when otherwise they would enjoy it. Premium housing, that is, housing options that you can buy with cash or Battle.net balance in WoW, it can work if it's done right, but I'm not sure what right means. I probably would consider using my Battle.net balance if I can turn my guild hall into a giant flying airship, but I'd probably be pissed off if I could pay for a refrigerator that provided like real buffs that were useful in a raid. I would even be pissed if we couldn't get an NPC that gave free extra role tokens. So to summarize this whole monstrosity, player housing is the evergreen feature that WoW needs to be the cherry on top of the monumental but underrated endgame of collection. Housing starts while leveling, it lasts to the endgame, and it endures regardless of the expansion. It would be account-wide and largely be supported by professions, whether or not those players care for the system. It would be very accessible with an easy building engine and account-wide access. It empowers us to express individuality beyond player power, and there's only a really slim chance player housing will ever happen in any way or shape or form. This is a big passion project of mine despite how futile these efforts might be. I mean, I look at other games that provide everything that I'm asking for and more, and yet it's not nearly enough to get me to jump ship. I would like traditional housing here in the world of Warcraft. And someday it could happen. But if not, maybe in a few years, as stats squish, as raids get recycled, expansion features come and go, and our collection tabs fill more and more, maybe you'll get another reminder from me that there's an audience that's hungry